Hi, welcome to Maggie Chats Books. Today I'm going to do my August wrap-up part 2. These are the books that I read in the latter part of August. If you'd like to see what I read in the first half of August, I'll link that video below. So let's get started. The first book that I read was an ARC from NetGalley by David Lebovitz. It's a nonfiction book called Lebovitz, or The Apartment. It is his account of living in Paris and actually buying an apartment. This is his second book. His first book was A Sweet Life in Paris, I believe. He is a chef, and so the book was about his experiences moving to Paris, and also it was like every other chapter you got a recipe. So it was a really good book, and I enjoyed that one. This book, unfortunately, I did not. It was such, to me, a whine, and got bordered on being just an ugly American kind of rant about how things are different in France, and I'm not sure if that's what he was wanting to do. I think he wanted to be funny, but it just turned out to be kind of a whine. And it's pretty much, I wanted to buy and look for an apartment, but it's different than the way it's done in the US. I wanted to get a mortgage, but it's different the way that's done in the US. I wanted to buy a sink, and it's different, a stove, and that was what it went back and forth on for the first 50% of the book. But I decided I want to stick with it because there are recipes through it that look good, and I thought there would be some redeeming qualities, that he would see the joy in what he had. But then he got to the point where language is different or difficult to understand, and he was looking for a dish drainer, and he was saying that the dish drainer is also the same word or similar word to a woman's halter top, and he thought it was probably because both had racks. And I'm sure he did that to be funny. I'm not sure, but it just, I was done then, and I DNF'd the book. I thought it was such a poor attempt to show something that would be new and interesting. Purchasing an apartment, it was an old building. It could have been so much more than it was, and I DNF'd it. It might, in the last half of the book, have turned around and become something very special, but I just wasn't ready to give it my time, so I DNF'd that one. And the next book I read was A Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. I was looking so forward to reading this book. Unfortunately, I DNF'd this one as well. There are a couple storylines in this. A bookshop owner, the bookshop is on a barge on a river in Paris, and the bookshop owner is able to judge his customers and provide them a book which helps them in their life some way. So that part of the book was really interesting. Unfortunately, he had a romance 20 years prior to this book setting, and the woman that he had the romance with left him. And he is still torn up about it after 20 years. But there were so many inconsistencies with that, in that she left him a note, but he never read it. Why? It was never explained. You get her diary entries during this, and she's not a likable person. She's very selfish. I just didn't care for that. There's one part in the book where the woman is describing a dance that she had with the librarian, or the bookstore owner, and he wasn't passionate enough, so she slapped him twice to make him angry so he would be more passionate and dance better. And I thought, is that romantic? I'm not sure. I thought it was violence against somebody you're supposed to love, and embarrassment, and being slapped is very humiliating. So I had to stop there. I just didn't like it. I didn't like where it was going. I was hoping I would get more of the bookshop, but instead I got more of a romance. So I did DNF it, which I'm very, very sad about, because I was so excited. A bookshop set in Paris, there could be nothing better, but unfortunately I didn't like it. The next book I read was Gensis by Barnard Beckett. This is a science fiction novel set in a dystopian type world on Earth. The world has been riddled by disease and war. A group of people managed to escape to a group of islands, and they've closed themselves off from all of the rest of the world. They are probably in their 4th or 5th generation living on the island, and there's AI type characters in this book as well as humans. And the book follows, in kind of an interview format, a young woman who is trying to go before the academy, which is the kind of the ruling party on the islands. and she wants to work for them. So she is brought forth to have an interview, and you kind of feel like you know the way the story is going, but in 150 pages it leads you down one path, and the ending was completely surprising to me. I really thought this was well done. This book was published, I think, in 2006, but I just heard about it this year, and I gave this one 4 stars. Thought it was really good. The next book I got is The Weight of Water by Sarah Crossan. This book is, I believe, a YA book, and I had read Sarah Crossan's book 1 earlier this year, and if you've watched my videos, you know it's like one of my favorite books of this year. I gave it 5 stars. She writes in prose, and I love that style. She can do so much in one page of prose that many authors take sometimes a chapter to do. She really develops characters well that way, the setting, the mood, and I really enjoyed this book. This book is about a young Polish girl who moves to England with her mother. They go to Coventry, I believe, and she is kind of a fish out of water. She doesn't speak English very well. She needs to go to school. Her mother has moved her there because she is looking for her husband, the young girl's dad. He left the family earlier that year, and it's her experiences in school, dealing with her mother who is trying to find her father, and then eventually dealing with her father. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, done so, so well. I love Sarah Crossan's writing. I want to read more, and I'm not really into YA that much, but it's such a great book. And I recommend this one as well as 1. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It's really good. And the next book I read was A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik Backman, or Backman, I'm not sure how you say it. This book is about a 59-year-old man who was raised predominantly by his father. His mother died when he was quite young, and his father had very high morals, a very simple man, and that's how he raised Uwe. He was a loving father, but he also died when Uwe was pretty small. Uwe is now 59 years old, as I said, and he lost his wife 6 months prior to when you join the story. So he's quite miserable. He is a grumpy man. He really has no use for anybody in his life. But then this couple with their 2 children move in next door and change his life for the better. This story was, to me, so moving. It was one I could not put down. All the characters in that story were done so well. Uwe, the lady that he meets in the family, the daughters, you can see how they come in and just change his life no matter how much he resists that change. This book actually made me cry. Ugly face cry, totally admit it. It was just so beautiful. I absolutely loved this book, and as soon as I was done with it the next day, I watched the movie, which was also done very, very well. It's a Swedish movie with subtitles, but they just nailed the book, I think, and did a wonderful job. So I recommend the book, gave it 5 stars. I also recommend the movie as well. It's really well done. You will ugly face cry on both of them, I gotta say. So the next book I read was Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk by Kathleen Rooney. This book takes place in 1984 on New Year's Eve. Lillian is an 85-year-old woman who has lived in New York most of her life. She's had a career when most women did not. She worked for Macy's and pretty much wrote their ads, and later had a career as a poet and wrote a couple books of poetry. She's had quite a full life, had some very sad things happen within her life as well. And on New Year's Eve, she has a standing reservation at one of her favorite Italian restaurants. So she walks to the restaurant, and after she gets done with her meal, decides that she's going to walk pretty much throughout Manhattan. And she does. And as she's walking through Manhattan, she reflects on her life, the good and the bad. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful story. You fall in love with Lillian. You understand where she's coming from. She made choices in her life that were different than most women at the time. Working outside the home, not getting married till she was much older than most women. And it's just a really, really good book. I'd heard about this book on BookTube quite a bit, and it really lived up to everybody's recommendations. This book I gave 5 stars to as well. I thought it was super, super good. Totally a different story than I'm used to reading, and I really enjoyed it. So those are the books that I read in August. If you read any of the books that I read this month, please let me know what you thought of them, especially the ones that I DNF'd. I rarely DNF a book, and to DNF 2 in a row is really unusual for me, so I'm anxious to hear what other people thought of them, especially if they were able to finish them and they got better at the end. I would like to know that as well. The other books I really loved, want to know if you loved them too, or if you had issues with them. And I will talk to you later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.